All right, here we go, boys. It's emergency facial hair podcast. Yesterday wasn't enough. We didn't see enough of Bill's beard. We couldn't see any of Chris's little setup here. What is that? That's not a Fu Man. Not a Fu Manchu. What do we call this? The setup here.
That's a beard.
It's a
I've got
beard, yeah.
It's a
that's,
beard, mustache. Again,
It's
I
just
wasn't
a
sure there's a name
little
for it.
white on
are you
the right.
like? Do you not see facial hair?
No, I don't have facial hair, but but facial hairs have names. Like again, it's not a Fu Manchu, but I was trying to see if it was a name for kind of the style you had there. That's all I was looking for here.
No, the hair it just grows in better on the front.
Okay, it's
Not as much on the side. It's natural. It's all
look,
natural there.
it's a
Mike.
facial hair podcast. If we don't talk about the styles of the facial hair, then what are we doing here? I mean,
Nope.
talking about fantasy football. Who wants to talk about that?
We just have to guess what James looks like with his facial hair.
He doesn't have a face.
You know what? The avatar there doesn't have anything there. I think we'll just have to start putting like a fake picture there. Maybe a picture of Matt Rule. Does Matt Rule have facial hair?
No,
No.
I don't think so.
Who knows?
Like, maybe whenever he's like horribly depressed because the season's going to shit.
Nah, I graduated and I pretty much threw away my webcam.
Oh, okay.
The end of my college career was, hey guys, you can't come on campus because COVID's out. So, yeah, and I've got a dual monitor, like gaming / I was doing some coding stuff early on with computer science. So,
I'm sorry. You said you graduated during COVID?
yeah, I'm a young buck.
You are a young
College,
boy.
I graduated college. So, but, yeah.
All right, I feel old. Anyways, so we finished our podcast last night. We had a nice conversation of 7 or so owners on there. That led to some ideas. That led to some offers. That led to some activity today. So, because of the far-reaching nature of that activity and the impact on some of the potential races, by popular demand, we've got an emergency facial hair podcast here where while these guys are talking about the trades, I'm going to see if I can figure out what style of sort of beard mustache Chris and Bill have going here so we can put a name to that so we can, check the box of facial hair podcast, but talk about the deals. Do we like, do we not like, and how does that impact each of these respective races? So anyways, Chris,
Yeah.
how are we feeling?
I'm surprisingly feeling pretty good today. Normally I don't trade sober, but this was one of those, and it I think it works out for both of us. So again, like Mike said, you'd been sending a couple random offers about twice a week maybe that I would let sit for a few days and decline. And I actually took the time to look on this last one, made a counter, and surprisingly, we agreed on a deal, and it didn't take that much effort. As you all know, if you've been watching the podcast, I've been getting crap for running fields since the draft. Not giving up on them, but I did want somebody that's going to score me more points this year. And I believe I found that in Herbert. Obviously, trying to upgrade there means I got to get rid of my stud young running back that I acquired. So sad to part with him, but otherwise, I feel good about the pieces that moved. What are your guys' feelings on this, James, Bill?
I mean, I love Fields.
Shocker.
I've got one person in my camp.
No, I love Fields. I definitely see the value in Herbert, obviously, but I mean, overall, like, I guess if you look like at name value, like Mike technically wins, quote unquote. But at the end of the day, I like this for both of you. Mike gets his random tight end that he needed, and yeah, somehow goes less than a month without Javonte. Gets him right back.
Which he no longer has again.
Yeah.
Look, if I acquire a young stud running back, I am required by law to trade him within 24 hours.
No, honestly, whenever you got him, I was like, oh, we'll never see Javonte move ever again.
That was my feeling for about a week.
Yeah.
But besides the deal with Mike, I had looked at I had sent out some other feelers trying to use Javonte to upgrade at QB. This one, like when looking at Mike's team, I would have I was looking at a much smaller trade overall.
Sure.
But then all of a sudden I saw Keenan sitting there. I'm like, it'd be kind of fun to have Herbert and Keenan paired together.
Yeah.
This year. The difficulty is fitting in a $35 million wide receiver when you're not planning on taking them ahead of time.
Right.
So overall, I ate almost 13 million in cap, but I had 20 million just sitting there to spare right now. So I was fine doing that because from my perspective, I thought my guys were worth a little bit more in this format, but not so much to make it uneven. But then again, enough to make it me comfortable with saying, all right, I'll eat more cap, deal with that later on. And I don't know. I like this deal. I think it's well, obviously I like it. I did it, but I think it's balanced for both of us. We each get what we need.
I think that if you're okay eating the 35 million, whether you renegotiate him or not, I think it is totally fine. You just kind of have to live with however many weeks he ends up missing.
Yep. And not having Keenan on Mike's team, I think gives him more flexibility to do all the trades he wants to as well. Yeah. So I really did this for you, Mike, just to help out future you.
Yeah, I think the secret win of this is getting both Herbert and Chase. Just in the event that Herbert's trades don't live very long.
I feel like when it comes to the backup QB spot there, it's kind of how it is in New England. There's that good savvy vet, like there's Brian Hoyer in New England, but if someone's actually be gone long term, it's actually going to be the youngest guy, that third QB who actually plays. They have Easton Stick. He's been there for 2 years in development. He's actually got the throw power. He should have the knowledge in the system to where if Herbert actually is going to miss considerable time, I would assume Stick would probably get the nod, especially if there's any kind of struggle from Daniels, if they give him a chance in the first 2 games.
Well, I mean, they're definitely going to go vet because they're playoff contenders.
Yeah, but like I said, if they struggle a game or two, which I think they will, because Chase Daniels is Chase Daniels, they'll probably end up giving Stick a little bit more of a long-term run.
So, just again, this is not because I just traded him. I feel this way. This is honestly the research I had done on it after he went down with the injury. I posted actually a video in chat. Dr. Chow broke it down, and he and Kamara have similar injuries. It's not a rib injury; it's a rib cartilage injury, where it's nothing broken, but the cartilage itself has to heal because there's less blood flow to the cartilage. It takes longer to heal. The big thing here is it's not a structural issue. It's a pain management issue. So, again, trying to do anything is going to cause pain for him. So he's not going to be able to practice much. So he's going to be held out of practice, and people are going to be reporting based off of that. They're going to have to shoot it on game day, and then he'll play in it, and it's going to hurt like hell the next day. But it's not something that structurally would keep him out. The problem is it's just going to take a little while to heal, but it shouldn't keep him out unless something else goes bad. So he should still play from everything I'm reading on it. Daniel is there just in case the pain becomes too much. That, again, if the pain becomes too much, it's not going to be okay, we have 3 days to prepare Easton Stick. It's going to be the pain's too much. Okay, Chase, get in there and, keep the offense moving type situation.
Yeah, and I mean, as long as they don't have the same doctor from 2020, you'll be fine.
That doctor's actually being sued.
He is being sued.
Yeah, for $5 million. But the big thing, though, with that, though, is I actually know of another quarterback this has happened to, Tony Romo. Back in 2011, he had a rib cartilage issue. They never came out to say the severity of it, but then he ended up playing a game, I think it was against the Giants primetime, and he ended up going down third, fourth quarter of that game and ended up breaking a couple ribs and puncturing a lung. So it is something that can lead to a much more serious issue because it is a damaged portion of tissue in that area, which can make it easier for other issues in that area.
Right. No, and that's great. But I mean, that's the thing. It's there would have to be additional damage for something to go wrong. Is it a weakened area of the body? Yes, that could get worse if it's hit the wrong way. So they're going to try and protect it. They're going to try and manage the pain. But as it stands right now, every doctor that I've read anything from is saying he should play in week 3.
Yeah, but the concerning part about that is just the simple factor that, anything else, I forgot keep going.
So one of the things I did factor in to this trade as well was looking ahead to playoffs in our league. I expect to make the playoffs. I don't expect to be number 1 seed with how top heavy the 3 or 4 of us are. And if I don't get the bye on week 14, Fields has a bye week
useless.
that week,
Yeah.
I'd be QB-less. And
Yeah.
I think going into the playoffs with the owners, teams we have now, I think you have to plan for that somewhat. So
Yeah.
part of that was me doing that as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I just realized that, but I didn't even realize that whenever the trade went down. But I was more focused on thinking about how long Mike would actually have Fields.
Not very long with you two on the call.
But no, I remembered what I was gonna say. The nature of the original injury of when Herbert got down. From if you watched it, he had very little contact to have that issue, which just makes you think that potential further injury or re-injury would be greater risk, just because of how like the player who took him down on the play was very clean hit, pulling up, and
for sure.
Look how much pain he was in. So if he actually gets hit, and teams know it, and I do not doubt that a team out there like the Chiefs, if they were to play them again soon, which they don't, but there are people out there that there was a reason we had the whole the Saints scandal. Like a team will take that 15-yard penalty to potentially knock Herbert out. Like they might not say it, but someone will do it.
Yeah. No, it's again, it's a risk with any big name player at any position.
So the piece I'm probably most excited to get back besides Herbert is actually Eno Benjamin.
Yeah.
As odd as that sounds. I was just him having a shot here on a decent contract. I did put in a claim to trade extend him, just add 1 year. That's all I can fit in with how my contract years work and such. But since he's been here 2 years, he slightly decreases, but it'll be nice to get him off his rookie contract if he does well. Turns into a piece in the future to sell.
They all three of them seem pretty valuable, or like they all have equal value between Williams, Benjamin, and Connor.
I would say, when Connor's healthy, he's going to take the lion's share, but it looked like one of those where, and again, James has alluded to this in other situations where they're trying to keep the rotation intact. So with Connor going down, Eno doesn't step into that role. Darrell Williams steps into that role, and Eno maintains his role. So again, pass catcher, spell back type situation. That role has produced, I think, a 12 point per game so far this season. So small sample size, but so far so good. But again, if you're expecting that he's going to step into Connor's role, I think that's probably not a safe assumption. If you expect that his role as it is continues to progress, I think he's a great add there. My only concern there is with Rondale Moore coming back, if he starts dipping into some of those targets and some of those actions as well. So again, who the hell knows with Arizona? They've got 9 different guys that they're going to be getting the ball to. So quickly best ball.
They have Kavonte Ingram too, who's a really good back. He played at Texas and then transferred to USC just because of how good Bijan pretty much looked and took over the whole bell cow role for Texas. So he's a good back. He was just a little slept on because he played at a pass-heavy USC his last year. Past that, though, I'm a big Fields detractor. I've said a lot of negative things about Fields. I think one of the biggest things that you can just look at from a simple GM coach standpoint is both the GM and head coach there, got fired. They went and drafted him, trade up for him. It looked like a desperation move to me. Trubs didn't work out. So Nagy and it's not Pool's the new guy. Can't remember the old GM's name, but they trade up, get Fields, Pace, and then ever since then he's done nothing. And if you go back in time to, there's a huge list of GMs and head coaches that draft a quarterback, and after their first year they're fired. And if you go look at those guys, outside of like Phillip Rivers, none of them ever became anything. And by a huge list, I mean from like 2007 to like now, you got it's happened 30, 40 times. So you've had a guy get drafted first and they're just done. I think Trevor Lawrence is definitely a little bit of a special case because his head coach was kicking the kicker. That's a little bit of a mental case when it comes to Urban Meyer. But there's been plenty of good head coaches in the past that draft a guy, couldn't figure out, and then keep going from there.
Yeah, I think Fields is going to be fine if they would literally just focus on protecting him, and they don't, and
giving him weapons.
Weapons are irrelevant. Tom Brady made 15 years. out weapons.
Fields isn't Tom Brady though.
No, I'm not
You
saying
need
that,
to.
but he was protected. He had
Part
to
of it too
figure
is I don't think they will. That's part of it too. Like the Bears, if they get a
Those-
top 5 pick this year, and it's a new head coach GM, why would they stick with him
They're going
when
to
they can restart anew and they have all the
they're
extra
going to sign
picks?
some like offensive tackle, or they're going to draft some like ridiculous wide receiver, and that'll be that. But I don't know, man. Like I just firmly believe that Fields needs more than he's been given. He's not. Most quarterbacks aren't capable of making magic happen without protection, but he really doesn't have anything. Like he holds the ball for 2 seconds and he's already hit. That's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, but part of my detractor on him is if you actually watched and broke down his tape at Ohio State, most of the time he looked good was because his pass protection was really, really good. Once you get to the NFL, you have to have a faster clock. And if you just look at his first game he ever played in the NFL, he literally was top 5 fewest yards ever in an NFL game as the starting quarterback. And all he did was get sacked, what was it, 7, 8, 9 times by the Browns. Myles Garrett had an absolute field day.
That was a terrible game plan, but
Sometimes
I-
it's just need time.
so Fields is pretty polarizing. I still like him long term. I just needed something different this year.
Yeah.
I think he
Wanted to
might not be a
swap
Bear forever. I think that he might not get renewed, but I don't know.
Yeah, and James, honestly, I hope you're right. I hope that they come out of the season and say Fields isn't our guy. Let's get him to a different team.
Yep.
Like the Giants, for example.
I don't know, man.
Yeah,
Dykes
because
playing nice.
Daniel Jones is on his last year. If the Bears have a top 5 pick and the Giants are doing well and they don't want to bring Jones back, giving a second or third round pick to go get Justin Fields from the Bears, you draft the guy you want, everybody's happy. Because again, it's one thing to say that you can't.
Yeah.
He's had 28 pass attempts so far this year.
Mhm.
So the scheme has not been to let him throw. Now, James's point probably would be because they don't have confidence he'd be able to get it out in time. So to protect him and keep the offense moving, they're trying to be more run heavy, run the clock, slow down the game, try and get out of some of these things with a easy win. I don't think that's going to be how they're going to be able to continue the rest of the season, especially considering the other teams in the division. They're going to have to find some games where he throws the ball 30, 40 times. If nothing else, to see what they have there. Because if they are going to be that bad, they need to know confidently, we don't have our quarterback. We need to go get somebody.
Yeah.
Or we do have our quarterback, and we need to give him the tools he needs to succeed. Like you said, it's a new GM, new coach. They didn't draft him. They've got to figure out what they have. And the only way they're going to do that is by letting him play. So I agree. He hasn't shown it yet. I think he can show it. I agree. He had a real big problem in college holding the ball too long. But if you look at it in terms of the point where he was able to sort of call the play, run the play, and sort of run the offense, he's looked pretty good at it. It's just, again, for whatever reason, last week, they got out of that after that first 15 plays. And I'm going to throw week 1 out because
Yeah.
It was bad. But my big thing with that is I've had this feeling for a while that Lamar in Baltimore is not going to work it out, and they're going to non-exclusive franchise tag him. And I don't know if you guys know what the non-exclusive is, but
Yeah.
technically it happened big with Kirk Cousins. It's essentially the same thing as a franchise tag, except a team has the right to negotiate with you and to sign you if they have the willingness to part with 2 first-round picks.
Mhm.
And I feel he ends up in New York because New York wants the big market player. New York would have a good enough first rounder this year. And they have enough extra draft capital. I feel like they would just to make it happen.
I think that Lamar's going to get his $50 million a year, or whatever the hell he's asking for, and he's going to get what he wants. And whoever pays him is going to be very, very happy with it.
Right. So again, polarizing player in Fields. The way I
Yeah.
broke down the trade from my perspective was if you look at the quarterbacks and the running backs changing teams, I saw that as about even. So
Yeah.
again, a Javonta and Fields probably equals a Herbert. And then if you look at how Flacco's been playing at that price, plus some of the ancillary pieces in here, it comes out to kind of a wash as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Then if you look at the difference between Thielen and Allen on the contract he had, I think the difference between what Phillips is and what Za'Darius is makes up for that. And then in addition, getting Conklin. Conklin's been targeted 17 times already.
Yep.
That's, again, I don't know if it's not the most because Higbee's been targeted 20, but it's one of the most targeted players in the league so far. So at a position where I had a need and I have the heir apparent in Ruckert, it just made sense for me to go get Conklin. So it shores a position of need for me. I feel like I upgrade at pass rusher. I pay a little bit more, but Phillips, while he's been on the field for whatever reason, isn't getting pressures. It's either they're shifting the line away from him or what, but he has not been getting QB pressures or QB hits. So I was willing to kind of step away from him right now. He's going to have his games. He's probably going to get to 6 or 7 sacks at the very least. But he's been getting on the field, I think, for 70% of the snaps.
Yep.
So he's going to get his chances, but he just hasn't been. And it gave me the rotation of basically the 3 main pass rushers for the Vikings. So
I think the best thing.
What was that?
Go ahead, Chris.
No, sorry. What'd you say?
I was saying I think the best thing for this is that Keenan Allen is moved. I think that is the best part of this for you.
Well, and again, I like the role that Chris has him in. He's got Gabe Davis. He's got Amon-Ra. He doesn't need to rely on Keenan Allen as the number one. He's going to get wide receiver 1 weeks from him. But if Keenan takes a little bit of time to come back from the hamstring injury, performs kind of like a wide receiver 3 for a little bit, it's not going to sink Chris. Once he does start performing like that, that's really going to start ballooning things there. And again, coming to the running backs, the 12 points per game, I think that Enos had, and then Ebner, I love, and he's been my guy. This is the first year I've actually moved of him. He's the next person behind Khalil Herbert and kind of ran with him in the preseason, but also has been doing a lot of special teams work. So I think my 2 scoring running backs from me last week were actually Ebner and Benjamin. So definitely one of those sneaky guys that, because of special teams work, is going to have an additional set of points that come with it.
Yeah, I think Mike and I were pretty close on how we thought about it. Like, we didn't chat a lot about it, but I went through about the same process that he just described when I was trying to match pieces. And my biggest thing when I first did it was just plugging in the numbers, making sure the contract years matched up, because we're both pretty close to the cap there, and then making sure I got the actual cap hit itself somewhere lower than 20 million, so I have some wiggle room later on this year. But, yeah, I don't know. Like somebody said, I don't know if it was Titans. We've agreed on here that it works for both of us. There's a lot of sneaky upside players in there, a lot of consistent role players. I didn't want to move Conklin. Actually, that was probably the part I thought about the most. But if I want to get a QB, we put in the pieces that the other guy wants to see. So
you got to catch up in the division, man. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, got to do what I got to do. Got to aim for my wild card spot. This is what it looks like.
I know people don't like talking round ball on here, but it's the whole idea with the Donovan Mitchell trade being lost because they didn't want to give Grimes. Hold on, Quentin Grimes is the reason they're getting Donovan Mitchell. You're giving 3 first-round picks, you're giving a $30 million player in RJ Barrett, you're giving this, but Quentin Grimes is the reason that you're going to hold up. It's okay, I'm getting Justin Herbert, this. I'm giving Justin Fields, Javonte Williams, but Tyler Conklin's the reason I'm not going to make this deal.
So actually, the linchpin, the final piece that was added was it was Flacco. That was the final. Mike's like, is there any special reason you didn't throw him in? I'm like, yeah, not really. I made everything work prior to that. So, but
again,
it makes sense.
And I wasn't sure. It could have been I'm not confident in the ribs. I'm not confident in the Chase Daniel situation. If you would come back and said, no, I need to hold Flacco, I would have understood. But again, just a little bit of.
Again, I would have probably preferred to hold Flacco, but it wasn't a deal breaker. Like if your trade mate asks for a piece and it's a blockbuster deal and you're not attached to the hip with the final guy they ask for, throw him in. Just do it. It makes the deal work. Yeah. So
again,
and maybe that works out great for you. Maybe it takes longer for what's his name to come back.
Get that job back.
Can't remember his name, so maybe Flacco holds
Zach
it for
Wilson.
a while. Yep, there we go.
Anyways, all right. So that was the first domino, and the last time Chris and I made a deal like this, It turned out beautifully for him. In fact,
Yes.
there's a GIF from Gladiator where the slave owner is introduced, talking to a previous salesman, grabs him by the balls, and says, "The giraffes won't mate. You sold me queer giraffes." Because basically, right after this happened, CMC went down for the year, and Rodgers had his relax game last year. It's like, the
Yep.
fuck did you sell me? So. Hopefully that
It'll
doesn't
work
happen
out differently
again.
this time. We'll have to track this one in the coming weeks on how we
Yeah.
do.
We'll see who's got the queer giraffes on this side. All right, so that was the first domino. Second domino, again, by law, I'm required if I get a stud running back to move him within 24 hours of getting him. I've been trying to get Gross Matos from the Rams since before Rams drafted Gross Matos. In fact, in that draft, I traded up to get him. And then Rams took Gross Matos, and it's like, shit, and I settled for Josh Kelly instead. So I must have, I probably sent him 20, 25 offers for this guy.
Yeah.
As soon as he paid for 24, it's like, okay, this is just simple. So I offered Javonte and DJ Wanham to kind of make everything work, since he was also looking for a linebacker, for Gross Matos, his 23 first and his 24 first. So I get 2 firsts and what I feel is a good pass rusher and a D end on the other side of Brian Burns, who is on the field 70% of the time. So I liked him in college. I like him in the pros. And I think at some point he's only had, I think, 4 or 5 points so far, just in terms of his QB pressures and otherwise. He's going to get his, and getting just one more body at the D end position, considering how deep I feel at the linebacker position, made sense to me.
You are incredibly lucky that he only has 7 points on the year. Because I think if he had actual productive games, he would never have been involved in this.
See, I'm not that high on Gross Matos. I would have seen him as a throw-in piece for the overall deal.
He's 5 years sub 2 million. He's worth something.
I get that.
He was a big time high school recruit and went to college and looked solid, but never really lived up to the 5-star. And so far in the pros, he's pretty much been a rotate piece so far. And when he has rotated, there have been flashes, but there's also just been a lot of boring. So it's definitely worth the stab. It's a lot of contract years for a guy that hasn't really proven much. But he's also your defense end 4. So
Once
five once I get Young back.
Yeah.
So that's high upside, easy piece to add into the trade. The 2 late first, essentially, because Rams is a playoff team this year and
100%.
more than likely next year.
100%.
And getting those 2 and the kind of player Mato is, it kind of makes me wonder about the Javonte Williams, just because of how much we've seen players like CD go here recently. Than with the hype around Javonte. I'm not quite as high as everyone else is on him, and maybe his value's coming down a little bit, and this is more correct. And then DJ Wanham, it's a little surprising. Just he's been really productive with the low snap count, and that Vikings D-line has not been that impressive to start the season. So
I think this clears up a whole lot of issues for the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
This basically makes a sweep in the division. It wasn't already going to happen, I guess. But it puts him in great position. I would be very happy if I was him. Swift, Javonte, and Jalen Waddle and Marquise Brown, if you care about that.
And Aguilar. I mean, he's producing.
Yeah, but I mean, I would be very happy with that. Having a tight end. He basically turned into Mike. He only needs a tight end.
He has Tanyan there.
Tanyan's back and healthy, and there's no one to catch balls early in Green Bay that's been defined yet, at least.
Yeah, when they figure out what the hell they're doing in Green Bay, I think he's going to be just fine there. So I agree. I think he's going to win the West this year. I think there is a conversation next year in terms of who wins the West. Seattle will be starting to come out of their rebuild. I don't think they'll be competitive yet, but they're starting to move that direction probably next year. The Cardinals with a core of
Burrow and Chase.
Burrow, Kenneth Walker, Jamar Chase, and others could build into something there. So again, I think he's going to win it this year. No question about it. That's going to be a late first. 24, a lot can happen between now and the end of next year. So I'm not willing to count on anything. I'm kind of keeping everyone kind of in that middle tier of things right now, and we'll kind of see where things pop out. So
I mean, he won't have a quarterback next year, so it could be very helpful for you.
Well, he might. Again, who knows what happens with who knows what happens with Baker?
We all know what happens with Baker. Nothing. Baker gets like 8 games this year.
Just like Fields next year.
But who are they going to replace Baker with?
Maybe Fields.
They're gonna play PJ Walker.
Right,
Because
so
Donald's not going to play apparently for whatever reason.
we'll see what happens with Baker. But either way,
I think this is great. Like, Mike, I know that you're like loading up for 2024. Like, I think this is great. Like, I love watching you do what you do because you think about it from like the average team's like roster, and you're like giving up every valuable piece that a normal team would have, but you still have like 80 other pieces that are worth just as much. It's just crazy.
Again, it's I have certain pieces that I want back, so it's just worked out so far. So we'll see if this ends up working out or if I outsmart myself. But anyways, like you said, it takes care of
pretty well, I think.
Takes care of a lot of things that that Rams needs. Wanham is playing for less than $1 million right now. He's already got 2 sacks on the year, and he's got 2 years left on his deal. So doesn't make sense to extend right now because of a 40-point game and a 3-sack game that he had last year. Once he gets past that, I could see an extension coming, getting him locked in cheap.
Yeah.
If bad news, he gets another 3-sack game or 2. I think first off, Rams would probably take that, considering he's competing. And if not, then that's when he extends him.
Yeah. I'm looking at the schedule for week 3, and I didn't realize that Rams plays Panthers, but all it does is remind me about James. You were like, I feel pretty good about the next 5 weeks. And I'm like, I don't know that you should anymore for this week.
I mean, James has got more power right now. So James is probably going in there still favored. Tua threw for 6 touchdowns and 400 yards last week to get everyone
for like 1 touchdown and 4 picks this week.
Well, again, so that's the volume he had to have to get Waddle to have the game he had.
Yeah.
So we'll see what ends up happening this week. I think there's a lot to be figured out.
Yeah.
Last trade with me, in a good segue, because there were 4, so James has the next 2, is again, I think it's been the worst kept secret in the league that, maybe second worst after I was trying to move Herbert, was that James was trying to move Deontay. But James, you want to take us through our deal?
You offered it to me. I told you I didn't like you offered me one offer, and I essentially just told you where I valued the Rams pick at, and I thought the player wasn't enough compensation. And then you came back and said, how about this guy? And I said, sure.
It was sometimes it's just that easy.
I mean, later, it better have been that easy.
Well, I mean,
we actually had it done before, like, the other trade even got processed by the commish. It just took me a minute to go accept it.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I asked him where do you feel about DJ is, and he told me. I said, well, what about Carter and the first? He said no. I said, well, what about Thielen the first? But I want Turpin back as well. And he said yes. So I get a guy who has wide receiver 1 upside and has made the Pro Bowl this year. So
what does it turn into salary-wise?
I think right now his last 8 games. So because he made the Pro Bowl, he gets the average of a renegotiation or an extension. But because he is still on his rookie deal on a 2nd-round pick, he's going to get the renegotiation anyway. So right now, based off of his performance, he's wide receiver 14 over the last 8 games.
Should take the whole year prior, I believe, for renegotiation, unless they don't have enough. But it's pretty close. It's 14 or 17, depending on which way it's done.
Yeah. So between the 5%, if you'd go right now, it's wide receiver 14 based off the last 8 games. Right now, wide receiver 14 in terms of salary is Michael Thomas at 13.4. A 5% upper puts him at $14 million.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I was to tag him, he was going to be 25.
Yeah. So
Quite a
Again.
steal.
Yeah, so
Let's
I
see.
definitely love Deontay, but it just came down to screw Keenan Allen.
yeah, basically. Who knows? Maybe maybe I'll franchise him anyway after Chris has renegotiated Keaton.
I'm waiting until the last hour, the last day,
I love
and then
you
I'll
too,
forget, and then I'll be hosed.
Excellent. All right, so those are those, and then James, you made another deal taking the first I gave you. So again, Rams pays for his 24, but his 23 first was on the move 3 times today.
James, this is where you talk.
Oh, yeah. I was shopping around for a lot of stuff. I knew that as soon as the Jets got Hardman, he kind of regretted it because he didn't realize he was going to have to fifth year him. And I did the math on the fifth year. It's like 14. I'm not sure if I'll do it or not, but I felt like that was a potential piece I might do. Then at the same time, I add Evan Ingram for this year and for 3 more years, and he's fairly cheap. So it gave me some depth at tight end while I wait for them to figure out in Arizona that they actually need to use Trey McBride when they make him shirt up instead of just special teams, because Max Williams can really do a lot in that offense when they don't run the ball that much anyway. And just the swap from the first to the third. I didn't really necessarily want to move Curse, but he's injured. $9 million. I'm hoping with the pick I'll get another safety.
What I find interesting is you give up a first basically to have to pick up a 5th-year option on Nicole Hardman.
I think it's more than that. I think
Well,
I have
a
Ingram-
14 million McColl and the prospect, just because of who his quarterback is, and no one's broken out there, over a $25 million Deontay that the Colts will just bid up to 40. And then I'll get a late first. So it's essentially I take a gamble and I get a receiver that might do something for me. And if not, he is a great best ball asset. And I essentially move Deontay, get Thielen, a good best ball receiver, tight end depth. I get out from underneath a $9 million safety contract, and now I just have to go find my next safety.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. It's I think it was Mahomes has already said going into the year, like for fantasy players, I'm sorry, because it's going to be a different guy every week. Sometimes it's going to be Kelsey, sometimes it's going to be Juju, sometimes it's going to be Hardman. So pick my guys, but it's going to be a different guy every week, and you're probably going to have a hard time picking who it's going to be. So Hardman's going to have probably 2 or 3 games, I think, this year where he is a top 10 receiver, just because he, gets over the top, gets hit a couple of times by Mahomes, sees 8 or 9 targets in a game, and throws up, 6 for 150 and 2. And other games he's going to get, 3 for 17. And that's just going to be the live and die with him. But you have enough of those guys, and that is good enough to win you the league here. So I'll take him, and then Ingram's getting plenty of targets down in Jacksonville. Things are looking better from an offensive system there. And in Peterson's system, the tight end is used quite a lot. So I like him. And I think he's probably worth, I would say, in that second range. So you're given what is probably a late first for a receiver who is probably worth a second in his new contract in a best ball format. And then Ingram was worth a second. You get out of the Curse contract, and you kind of see what else comes from the rest of those pieces.
Yeah, the other small note on Hardman is he's been sharing punt duties too with Sky Moore, which gives
That's
you
right.
a little bit extra value too.
Yep. So, all right. So 4 trades, but let's talk about what this does to the makeup of things. So Chris has got himself a quarterback. He's got himself a bit of a remade roster here. Do we like his chances in the North more or less than before he made the trade?
More. Just on Herbert alone, I like it more.
I like it personally a lot more. I felt like he quite handedly won the trade.
Cool. I'm not going to be offended. I wouldn't have made the trade if I didn't like my side.
I think that there's a real shot. I don't know what the hell is going on with Dobbins.
He was just traded.
I don't know what's going to happen with Jimmy G and Daniel Jones on a week-to-week basis. I think that, Chris, you have the most consistent quarterback of the group, in my opinion. And this is literally St. Brown's breakout season, clearly. And so I think you have a great shot to catch up and potentially take it.
I'm hoping so. I'm happy with St. Brown. I hope he continues to break out this year. I bought him here. I sold him in a few other leagues thinking, sell the hype on it. I bought him here just because of the PPR floor, but if he continues to be the main target and have that big play, I think he's the key. I had quite a few direct messages with people after the trade. A couple comments on how one person was commenting on how my team will look now that I lost some depth, but I don't think I really lost any depth on there. I lost some tight end depth with Conklin going. He was my top tight end, but if Hawk can actually do anything here this year, and if Njoku does something, I think I'm still fine there. That's the benefit of having 3 tight ends that are technically, starting tight ends on there, is you can use one in a trade. So
I think it's just the name value of like not seeing Javonte.
Yep.
I think that's all it is.
Yep. So my running back room is back to secondary running backs, but I have a lot of them, which I'm fine doing. It's running back by committee in best ball, and I'm perfectly fine running that because look at any year and there's injuries, and if you collect enough running backs, there's a shot that your guys get more work week to week. So, I can't be stacked at every position. So running back's the one where I went ahead, and now I'm back to just next man up every week and hope for it. So I like my odds better. I like my odds in the playoffs better. Again, I already mentioned that because I don't have a week 14 bye for my QB. And when I was looking to move Fields, I figured I would at some point in this year. I didn't want to move him for anyone. Like I wanted to shoot and trade up and put other pieces in to get like a top 5 dynasty QB. And I found one in Herbert. So I like my odds better. I hope it's reflected in the Panthers power rankings, the next release of those. Eagerly look forward to them. There's not much more space above me, but I'm hoping I can steal a spot and keep climbing up.
Eagles made a trade. What did he do?
Random pieces.
Snell and 2 forced for Jimenez.
I don't know Jimenez.
O'Shane. Interesting. That is fun.
He's done quite well so far. 21 points after 2 weeks and less than $1 million.
I'll be right back, guys.
No worries.
He's just an edge that's filling in for 2 injured edges. New York has been without Ajuware and Thibodeau. So once they get back, just because of the amount of capital money's invested in them, you'd assume Jimenez would go into rotation. Might be a good rotation, but still.
But he also paid nothing for them. So
2 force and a rotational back.
Good move, RJ.
I like that. And again, considering 20 points and who knows whether Thibodeau and Ojulari are going to have to be kind of worked in slowly but surely. They've been practicing on the side, so they haven't really gotten a lot of field time yet. So that could be something that takes a little while before they're fully up to speed.
Yeah, it's definitely a good buy for the price. It's just he's not any huge of note. It's definitely great for the Eagles, though, just because his linebacker core is very thin with Davis, Mosley, and like he said, and I agreed, Gregory just kind of looks a little out of place in the 3-4 linebacker role in Denver.
Yeah, they're still got to figure all that stuff out.
So, Mike, you're the next team up for odds up or down.
Well, my odds are down because I immediately traded the most valuable piece I got back for picks. So
we'll say net down in the power rankings, but you have the pieces you're looking for.
Yeah, again, I feel good about Fields, and I have Flacco for probably. I think Flacco is going to get me through the doubleheaders as a second QB option. So if Fields doesn't turn into anything, I think between where I'll be just from the rest of my team scoring, I'll still be kind of in that wild card race. But
Yep.
that's probably where I put myself anyway this year. And we'll see what happens if things pop, if things don't pop. I've been trying to spread out as many of my points as I can across my team and make sure I've got a good enough defense to kind of carry me on the back end. So, we'll see if that works out there and if my gamble on Fields pays off. And then I'm up to 7 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks for next year. So for 24. So continuing to add to my treasure trove there, and we'll see kind of where I go next, because I'm not going to sit on this team as it is. Other pieces are going to move, and we'll see if I can kind of keep myself in that wild card conversation. But I'm not done, and I'm never going to be done.
Yep.
I think when it comes to the top 3 and it comes to the power rankings, depending on whatever power rankings we're looking at, the ones I've been putting out or just some of the ones I've been sitting around, you've always had a slightly better defense because of your linebackers than the Giants have. It's just been the Giants with all of those running backs is kind of hard to dethrone.
Yeah.
Especially since your quarterback was Fields compared to Josh Allen. That's a huge difference. But everybody in the top 3 is very close to each other. Especially if the Browns and Russ doesn't start cooking. But that and his defensive end rotation is a bunch of not necessarily good names, but he's got a great linebacking core. Well, it's a big sack linebacking core.
Yep.
And Pete Werner.
Yep. So again, it's the top 10 of this league, I feel like, is pretty close. I know the rankings like to give Falcons the over and above on top of everything right now, but I think that the top 10 is pretty close here. It's really going to come down to health and luck for how this all shakes out.
Yeah, the Chargers, Rams, Dolphins. I think when you get down to the essentially the top 4 are pretty set in. Obviously, there's a little bit of weakness with your team, but definitely the top 3 are set in. And then the big thing with the Packers and Jeremy is just it's a thin team. He has one injury at one spot, like tight end. Mark Andrews goes down, he's got a serious issue. Lamar goes down, he's done. His only real receiver that's shown anything is Kupp. Obviously, he has Sutton. And depending on what exactly happens with Jerry Jeudy, maybe his volume goes up. But he's just a very thin team. It's a very boom team.
Yeah.
And it booms a lot. He's got some really good assets in the spots he does have.
So yeah, it's 2 different ways to put the team together, and it's going to come down to luck there. So RJ, glad you could join us. We just talked about your deal a second ago. We like you grabbing a rotational guy with Ojulari and Thibodeau potentially coming back, but he's done well so far. So 2 force in the snow. We like that for you.
Thank you. Yeah, he played a lot of snaps. I agree. He kind of fits more back into rotational, like once they get back. But yeah, just hoping that he maximizes his opportunities, and it looks like he's getting a lot of opportunities as far as snap count.
Yep.
Yeah, 60% of snaps.
Yeah.
That's pretty decent.
Yeah.
They've been rotating very heavily. The Giants have.
Yep. It seems like they aren't overly impressed with Crowder, like as much as like was expected for them to get rid of Martinez, and like you see other people kind of like taking a couple of snaps for him in relief. Like he was, I want to say he was in like the 80s snaps, 83% snap count. So yeah, like I'm just hoping that Ximenez gets, I don't know, 40% of snaps the rest of the season, just like plugged in at different spots.
I'm just trying to see what is the Giants.
I would imagine he probably gets somewhere around that, the 35 to 45%, rotating in and out with Thibodeau and Ajuwari.
Yeah.
They're gonna they've been rotating like crazy, especially their big men. And
Yeah,
then they have
Kutcher
just been thin at linebacker, but they're still rotating fairly decent at linebacker.
Yeah, Kutcher and Fox, they've had at about 40% of the snaps. Zimenez was about at 63%, with Crowder and Ward being close to 90. So the next tier down for him would be in that 40% range and probably knocking out a Fox or a Kutcher as he goes. But the pass there. All right, about 50 minutes into this, and it was an emergency pod, so I'm not going to try and go marathon here. So we'll see if we can make more magic happen this evening. We're not going to have a third pod this week. So any parting thoughts before we close out?
Nope.
Although I am realizing that we didn't talk about James's team, whether we feel his team got better or worse in terms of their projection here. So I will pause and we can cover that before we go. So moves out DJ, move some of those pieces into Thielen, Hardman, and then just a couple more point scorers there. I like the move for him in terms of competing this year. Again, just more pieces that can score points. Hardman can have his boom weeks. Thielen's looked okay. He's probably on this downside of his career, but he's still going to have a couple of good games. Just, again, the more pieces that can have big games for you, the better. And, again, Ingram, I think, is another piece of tight end that is he's going to give him a good solid floor. And that's kind of the other piece of this is you need to make sure you can maintain a floor so that you're getting points at these positions. Again, nothing worse than taking a 0, but you need to have the booms that can kind of lift your team on big weeks.
Yeah, I like it more for this year by far. So, which is fun to see. You start off 4-0 and then you build for the current year, which is what you got to do.
I'm also in a spot where I don't have any draft picks this year or next year, so it doesn't do much for me to hold on to a single first-round pick till the offseason to then, when draft picks get to the most valuable, to then break it down. And I feel Thielen has started off slow, and I can definitely understand the age thing, but Thielen just strikes me as one of those guys that is just such a good route runner that he's going to stick around for a little while. But he is a big Viking boy, so if the Vikings do decide to move from him, I wouldn't be surprised if he just hangs it up.
Yeah, and I feel like with him, it's O'Connell's first year with the Vikings, so I think he's still kind of figuring out exactly what the offense looks like. There's a couple teams that it's going to take a couple weeks here for them to kind of get everything kind of situated. So I won't make any major determinations off the first 2 weeks here. I think this is a long season here, and they're going to figure out what this looks like, and he's going to kind of settle into what he's going to settle into. But the target share he's had so far, I don't think is going to be indicative of where he settles.
Yeah, well, that whole offense has been bad to start with. Like, Dalvin Cook isn't even fantasy relevant this year. And then
again, they'll figure it out. But all right, now any parting thoughts?
Nope.
All right, 53 minutes, good times. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining. And again, we'll see what we make happen tonight and later in the week. If we don't talk beforehand, good luck in week 3, everybody.